Parents of Reddit with twins. Did you ever mix up which baby was which and just went with it? Father of twin boys here. We probably mixed them up several times, so they most likely have the right names now. We hope. You got a 50/50 chance. My sister said she's probably mixed them up and then mixed them up again for good measure. She says it shouldn't be a problem before they talk, unless one turns out evil. Oh, that one must have been Damien. I read somewhere to look at the belly buttons. Even in identical twins the belly buttons are always different. That makes sense since they're essentially scars. I have an identical twin, and when my sister and I were little, one of us had eaten some kind of antibiotic ointment or something. Scared, my dad called my mother in a panic and said my sister had eaten the ointment. My mom told my dad to drop me off at my grandparents' place and to meet her at the hospital with my sister. When he got to the hospital, my mom was upset and told my dad, "I thought you said, sister, ate it." Yeah, she did. This is the wrong kid. My dad had dropped my sister off at my grandparents by mistake and had taken me, the kid's on a belly full of medicated cream, to the air. I have twin sons, and I'm sure I never mixed them up. I kept bracelets or something on them when they were newborn. There was one time when they were a few months old and I gave them both a bath, and then noticed neither of them was wearing a bracelet. That was interesting, but my husband and I laid them both on the bed and looked them over, then agreed that we knew which one was which, because one had a pretty distinctive fold in his ear. My mom is also a twin, and as a child I once asked my grandfather if he was sure he never mixed them up. "Are you sure my mom's name is Jan?" And he says if you can't tell, it doesn't matter. I guess that is one way to look at it. That's what I figured I would do. I would use some kind of item or marking to distinguish the two. I have twin sons. I've never mixed them up. They were in the NICU after birth and had their own bracelets. One came home a week before the other. Once they were both home, I guess I just kept track of them. I was paranoid about getting them mixed up. I got baby safe toenail polish and painted one toenail orange on baby A and one toenail blue on baby B. But I never had to rely on that method cause I knew who was who. After a while, I noticed their belly buttons were different. As they got older, I saw slight variations in their faces. They're 3 years old now and personalities are night and day. Their voices even sound different. But this is all from a mother's perspective. I am with them every day and I know my children. Some family and friends still have trouble telling them apart. That being said, by looking at the back of the head, I may not realize who I'm taking to until they turn around or say something. A family story about identical twins. My grandfather had identical twin brothers named John and Julian. In keeping with the thread, my great-grandmother apparently cut their hair to distinguish them as infants, but gave it up when they got a bit older. When they were 5, they both got very sick with the flu. This would have been around 1938, in the backwoods of North Carolina. A doctor came to treat them, but they were at home for the duration of their illness. Julian died, and was quickly buried in their church cemetery. John survived after a very long fever, but was weak for many weeks after. At some point in the week or so following the burial, he became alert for the first time since falling ill, and asked after his brother. His mother soothed him, and explained that Julian had died. John then said, "But I'm Julian. My great-grandmother lived until I was in my early 20s, and she told this story several times. I was always fascinated by it." The heartbreaking part was her description of having to explain to not dead Julian that his brother really was dead. Julian assumed that since they thought he was dead, and since he was okay, that John must be fine too. That's sad. I get my non-twin teenagers mixed up. We had 4 daughters. Some days I had to start at the top and stop when I got the right one. I have an identical twin. My mother had our ears pierced when we were infants, and we wore different colored earrings to tell us apart. When we were babies, our older brothers were babysitting and thought it would be freaking hilarious to swap our earrings around. As in, we would each have a gold and silver earring. They would keep track of who was who, and Ma would flip out when she got home from work. Needless to say, they fricked up. Took a trip to the hospital and x-rays. One of us had something slightly different with the pelvic bone before it was straightened out, and that's why I have 2 holes in one ear. Twin here. One time, The babysitter intentionally swapped the clothes of my brother and me. It only took a few seconds for my mom to figure out that something was wrong. So no, I don't think she ever mixed us up. Even though we are identical, there are subtle differences in things like weight and complexion that could be used to identify us. Twin here. I know our parents mixed us up during our baptism, so it's not too far-fetched. It's one of the few things that I get asked as a twin that really could have happened. For some reason, I imagine one of you got baptized twice, so one of you in theory gets double heaven, the other gets heck. I am an identical twin. When we were 6, my family went camping. After many drinks, my parents decided that they could no longer tell the two of us apart and proceeded to grab the industrial-sized Sharpie. 2 days later, we walked into the first day of school with our first initials sloppily scrawled on our foreheads. Non-American here. Had no idea what a Sharpie was and assumed it was a sharp knife. Made for a somewhat horrifying story. My triplets are frat but when they were newborns. 6 weeks prem. They looked very similar. The boys looked different, but the girl and one of the boys were very similar. They had specific color hats and, once they were able to wear clothes in NICU, we tried to use that same color in their clothes so we could tell who was who with a quick glance. They're 2 now and I just use a generic kid to get their attention. Not gonna lie, I thought you meant your children were in a fraternity at first. For some reason, 1999 to 2001 was an incredibly fertile year for twins. There are so many twins in my school and I have 6 sets of twins this year, mixed between 5 classes. It's easy enough to tell the difference when they're in different classes, but the problem is that 3 sets of twins take the same class with me. 1 set of brothers is fraternal, but I have 2 sets of sisters who are identical, down to their hairstyle and their clothes most of the time. Even their nail polish is the same color and their glasses are the same. 1 set of sisters will mix it up and will dress differently about 1 stroke to the time, but I still can't tell them apart most of the time. The other set of sisters will link arms and walk lockstep into my classroom. They love being identical, will answer in unison when I call one of them, and both usually get the same grade on quizzes, missing the same questions. I finally split them up into different groups just so I could tell the difference. Also secretly I was starting to get weirded out. The other kids tell me they can't tell the difference either, mostly because these sisters don't make the effort to distinguish themselves. After having about 13 sets of twins in the last 5 years at this school, WTF was in the water. Honestly, there is always an evil twin and a good twin. Always. Even if it's slight, one twin is always a bit more conniving or bitchy while the other is more sweet and harmless. My husband's family has a history of twins, so I've gotten to know about an additional 4 sets of twins through him. After going most of my life without meeting one set of multiples, suddenly my life is a twins convention. The rise and use of fertility drugs has really amped up instances of multiples in the last 20 years or so. More twins on the planet now than any time in history, apparently. I agree with post saying more twins equals proportionate to global population. I'm an identical triplet. As far as parents go, my mom can tell us apart 50 yards away with our backs turned towards her. She notices how our personality reveals who we are with just physical display and gestures. My dad, on the other hand, does a full body scan before even addressing us by name. He usually never messes us up though. And grandparents. Don't get me started with grandparents. They fail 90% of the time. 90% is dramatically worse than random chance, so they must be able to differentiate. They're just doing it to tick you off. One of twin girls here. My parents were really vigilant about not getting us mixed up. They never dressed us alike, made sure we were in different classes in elementary school, reinforced our disparate interests. The few times we tried to frick with them, they sniffed us out so fast, you'd think we were Jenny and Carly. Number 1 is a boy and 1 is a girl, so that made it pretty easy to tell them apart. Also, they look nothing alike. We did have fun dressing the boy in pink and the girl in blue when relatives were visiting and then asking them to change a diaper, though. The one situation where a surprise dong is an acceptable prank. My cousin had triplets last year, all girls. At first they used color-coded headbands. After a month or so they could tell them apart no problem. Of course, if they were wrong they'd never know. I don't have children, but I'm half of a twin set of girls. My mum and dad had it pretty easy, seeing as I was born with a white patch of hair on the back of my head. So in dire situations I would be flipped around over and my head would be searched for the white spot. We have identical twin boys, but twinner had torticollis and was stuck in a magneto looking helmet for 8 months. He still has a strange looking head, so we haven't mixed them up. But cheers to all the parents of multiples. It ain't no picnic, although it is fun. And now I'm imagining baby Magneto. When they were newborn, yes, very hard to tell them apart, until I changed them. One had a dong, the other didn't. For the first couple of months, I would change them if only to orient myself on who was who. I'm guessing that the one with no dong did have a T, unless I'm mistaken. This clinically true in most cases. They're not identical, so after the first couple weeks it was pretty easy. While they were in the NICU they each had their own place in the incubator and then in the bassinet with cards on it so that they wouldn't get mixed up. Once we were in the hospital and had them both out, I put baby B in the wrong spot. I noticed it a moment afterward though. Now they are 3 and they look so different. Most people don't think they're twins and just ask how far apart I had them. Could you imagine a family who this happens to while the infants are not old enough to know their names? The parents misidentify each kid and then never make that error again. The twins grow up and both think they are the other one. For all intents and purposes they are. It's just a name. I wonder if any people who decided they wanted to be surprised by what gender child they were carrying also got surprised with twins. I mean, will a doctor even allow that? I keep picturing some poor woman sweating after hours of labor, just wanting to hold her baby, only to be told surprise, the other one's coming now, and poor dad having to run to the nearest Walmart to buy one more set of everything. My mom didn't know she was having twins until 7 minutes after she delivered my sister. The doctor told her he found another pair of feet. I have an identical twin brother. My dad told me a story about how when we were young, maybe 4 or 5, he asked us what we liked about being twins. We said you feel special because people pay more attention to us sometimes. He asked what we didn't like and we said no one knows who I am. Now I didn't remember any of this happening, and he told me this story last year. I'm 34. And it rang so true I started crying on the spot. I always did feel like people paid more attention to us, but no one ever knew if I was me or my brother and most never even used my name to talk to me or about me. I was always one of the twins or you or your brother. I never really realized that it bothered me until that day. Now this just breaks my heart. Not a parent, but my dad gets my brother and me mixed up all the time. Note that I am 2 years older than my brother and I am female. Sometimes he'll get my mom and me mixed up too. I believe this was a Full House episode. In Full House, a set of twins played a single character. My mum gave birth via a C-section, and both my twin and I popped out really fast. Quickly my dad named us, but forgot the order, as my mum wanted a very specific name for the youngest. After she was more with it after the drugs wore off, she was so peeved. We are fraternal, so we never get mixed up, except that one time. I'm happy though cause I got the cooler of the 2 names. We kept the boys' wrist tags on for a little while, but we pretty early on noticed that the swirls in their hair on the tops of their heads went in opposite directions. So from that point on, we were always able to tell which was which if we lost track. Twin here. My twin and I have different colored eyes, so that was how my parents could tell if they ever got confused. Twin brothers. Here, after birth my parents had a set of monkey papa diapers and a set of monkey uncle diapers and kept us identified that way. When we were a month old we spent a couple days at an aunt's house who wasn't aware of this system and could have possibly switched us. After that my parents used the fingernail polish trick. Were we switched? All I know is monkey uncle was slightly larger at birth, but ever since that incident monkey papa has been slightly bigger. Lucky for us, one of them has since birthmark on her hip. If we ever get them mixed up we just check their diapers. I guess that could get awkward as they get older. As a father of identical 4-year-old girls, they were in the NICU for 4 weeks so they had bracelets. Wife painted toenails when we brought them home. As parents we can tell by their voice and by who's crying. I have no clue if they are turned around and their back is to us. Grandparents still have a hard time, especially the grandpas. Everyone else has no clue. My wife's brother also has identical girls, 12 years old. I have no clue. Grandpas have no clue. My wife can tell them apart. My grandmother had 2 sets of twins. Father is a fraternal twin. Shoots crazy. And if I hear are they twins one more time, I'm gonna lose it. My wife laughs now when I reply, no, they are 5 months apart. No offense intended, but there is something about Asians and their culture that is fascinated with twins. Asians like to stare, take pictures and try to touch their heads. Our girls are blonde haired and blue eyed, and for some reason Asians are always taking pictures. Most times without even asking. My parent most of the time calls me by my younger brother's name, only we were born 13 months apart and he is 20 pounds heavier than me. I'm an only child and my mom gets me mixed up with her 2 dogs. It's always Razor, Cash, Emma McInhose. I come third after 2 dogs. I have twin girls who are now 15 years old. I worried about this before they were born, but it never happened. One of them has a rather large birthmark on her hip, so it was always easy to tell them apart at diaper changing time. Now they don't look alike at all, so it's never been a problem. At a family reunion when they were babies, one of them had a small cut on her nose. You know how baby fingernails can be. One of my cousins asked how to tell them apart, so I said Em has a cut on her nose. She asked how we tell them apart when she doesn't have a cut. I cut her. I'm a triplet and my dad will often call for us and say number 1. No, I mean number 2 crap. Number 3, he still does this even when we are in our 20s. It is very easy to tell us apart, but he keeps mixing up our names on a daily basis. To be honest, I would too. Usually he just yells at us all at once and sees who answers to get that person to help him out with whatever he needs. I just think that he probably just doesn't keep track of who is home and calls for us all. Besides, he is usually very busy during the day, and I do not think that we ever cared. Now if he has done this around other people, I have no clue, but my mom used to dress us up all the same when we were children, so I'm sure a few mistakes did occur. I have twin daughters. I know for sure that we didn't mix them up since we kept their hospital bracelets on for a few weeks, and then one developed a hemangirman on her leg and on the top of her head. It was the best thing to ever happen to sleep deprived me. Being a twin myself, I just always rationalized that if we ever did get switched, it's just as likely that we got switched back. I'm a fraternal twin. I was never mixed up by my parents. That being said, the government, our doctors, banks, etc. really needed to get their crap together. My entire life has thus far been full of people freaking up because my SSN is one off from my brother's. My mom painted my brother's toenails different color. Always made me think of how we marked our crayfish in elementary school. No one can tell them apart in their baby photos though. I never get them mixed up, but I say the wrong name all the time. The moment it comes out of my mouth I know it is wrong, but by then it has already happened and they are both staring at me. The only way I could tell my cousins apart when they were little was that one had a birthmark and the other didn't. I'm a twin and our parents could always tell us apart. In the beginning I was bigger than my sister, had one slightly different ear. Later, still as babies, my sister already had a deeper voice, etc. Identical twins are very similar but not the same, and after a few days the parents will know the differences. In photos or memories however, it's sometimes hard for our parents to tell us apart, but in the moment they always knew which was which. So there are pictures where we don't know which of us it is, and sometimes we discuss memories with our parents, correcting them or sometimes wondering which of us was which in the story. Interestingly enough, my sister and I sometimes get our memories mixed up too and both have the exact same memory, meaning that we both remember that we are the one that and saw our sister standing there. When it comes to memories, our parents still can tell apart the big stuff like who had this horrible accident and who was more quiet, character, etc. Currently pregnant with twin girls. The only reason I haven't screwed it up already is because the doctors tell me which one is which. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.